So, some people are asking me, like, Dikembe, now that Martha Karua has come on board, you've been one of Karua's foremost critics. How do you feel now? Do you still have your fears? And do you have a personal beef with Karua? What is it? A lot of questions about Karua's entry into Azimio. And I just want to say this. In politics, there's no permanent friends or enemies, no permanent admirers or haters. The admirers of today are the haters of tomorrow, and the haters of today are the admirers of tomorrow. But certain things remain constant, and you have to understand where or when some of us become politically conscious. We are not the people you'll really say appreciate what, for instance, second liberation was. We were not there totally. We come way later, after almost everyone and after almost everything has been done. We didn't even vote in 2002, so it's a distant. It's an election we saw. We were young, but it's not an election we participated in. We didn't even vote in 2007. Again, it's an election we saw. At least for me, I was in high school then, and you could get the nuances of that election. And where things really started getting bad in this country for my generation, and where we were jolted into the reality of politics, the reality of tribalism, the reality of, ethnic mobilization, the reality of election rigging, was in that election. So you have to appreciate when some of us have historical issues with Martha Karua. I was a young person just watching TV then, and I didn't like how that election was conducted. I didn't like the things I saw in KICC. I didn't like the manner in which Martha Karua conducted herself in KICC, and later on, I didn't like the vibe from Serena Talks. But these are things that now happened when some of us had started being politically conscious. So you could get the nuances in these events. And I used to read newspapers a lot, and I think let me just say I used to consume media a lot, and because that was the only a bridge. That was like the only bridge between me and the political world. I was, as I have told you, I was a student, a high school student, with very limited access to any other form of political knowledge or political communication. And we stayed home. I was in that generation that was going to sit for the exams in that year, and we stayed home for so long. And we never, that time we wasted between January to almost March, as other students from other parts of the country had resumed their classes, we were still, where I come from, people are still demonstrating, people are still protesting. Some teachers who are not originally or ethnically Luos had not returned. I remember some of my teachers who are, so to speak, Kikuyus had not returned to school. Some of my fellow students who are Kikuyus had not returned to school. So school was, and other students, by the way, came from other schools to join my school, and all these things, the narratives, the stories that they told, and the stories that we told ourselves then, made me very uncomfortable with Martha Karua, and I felt that she had cheated. I felt that Kibaki had cheated, and I felt that that would more or less form our initial, political knowledge about our country. So when Serena talks happened, and then later on you read from books, and you hear from people who participated in those processes, how Martha Karua was this grandstander, how she believed then that one would say that she pursued a very narrow ethnic, interest, as opposed to a national, interest. But that's politics. There are those who are with Martha in the 80s and 90s, and they have a different story to say about her. And one thing I've come to realize, because this is 2022, this is not 207, there's been a lot has happened. There have been 2 elections. Kibaki has retired. Martha Karua herself, despite being the Iron Lady, remember the only reason why Martha Karua was referred to as an Iron Lady is because of her grandstanding during the 2007 elections, both in the immediate pre-election environment, but also after the post-election, fallout. So you have to give it to us that is the only way she introduced herself to us, that she's a grandstander, she's a tribalist, she's a, somebody who would support a president who was clinging to power, having clearly lost an election, and she could go at any lengths to ensure that the post-electoral environment was such that the people who had genuinely won that election were completely kept out of government and out of power. And that is how her reputation was filtered to us. But all these things, you have to also appreciate my worldview, because that is formed in part by where I come from, or where I was born, or where I was raised, and who I am. And by and large, that has been, part of how we interact with, or how I interact with Martha Karua. But the other thing I would want to say is that, in politics, you begin to realize that it is not as easy, and it is not as linear as it looks. There is always progress, and then there is moments when people take, an about turn, and you see a sense of, regress. There are shortcuts that people cut. There are people who are willing to go, to use the long way, make the long walk. And so all these things inform how some of us have interacted with Karua. But more importantly, though, is that it's important that comrades, and I mean, when I say comrades, I really mean it. It's important that comrades, remember where they've come from, learn to forgive. Those who might have been crossed, they learn to forget, and they forge ahead. Because at the end of the day, the unique thing about those of us in the left is that we do not ordinarily disagree over principles, maybe spoils. But on the question of principle, we more or less see from the same angle. And that is what made it easier for Karua and Raila Odinga to again join forces, because they understand that at certain juncture, what is important is neither of them. What is important is, to pursue the ideal of our country, the best promise of our country. So that is important to understanding why I am very comfortable right now with Karua's return. You will call it a prodigious return to the fold, It's like that lost son we read in the Bible about. Yeah, so I'm very comfortable and very happy that Karua has returned. But there is always a caveat because we can't edit history. The things that have happened have to be said the way they happened. And if we disagree, at least let us disagree on their interpretation, but not to deny that they did not happen. Uh, the 2007 election happened. Whether it was rigged or not, those are the things we can disagree on. And I strongly believe that that election was rigged. And Martha Karua supported the people who rigged it. And she may have been part of the people who rigged it for her own reasons. It is also true that in the post-electoral environment of 2007, Martha Karua lost out. And part of the reason she lost out is because of the input she had made into that election and the belief that having done all that, at least the men in that election would, you know, give a place to stand. But Kenya also is a country of patriarchy, you know, and she lost not just as a woman, but she also lost what was then seen as the next Mount Kenya leadership evolving. So when Uhuru Kenyatta became the prime leader from Mount Kenya, it led to the collapse essentially of the Karua project, and that hurt her, and that was part of the reasons why she left government. And you see, unlike Raila Odinga or the other people in CORD, you see, Karua left a bit early also. So she's been out of government for a long time, and I think that time has allowed her to learn just how power is fickle, just how power is transient. And those lessons are important for politics as played in our country, but also for political players. That in Kenya, you are never really sure. And the games you play today might be the same games played on you tomorrow. So welcome, Mama Martha Karua. May the past be, may bygones be bygones. Let us forge a united future where young people like me support you, support your cause, but also try to understand why certain things happen the way they happened. And when we grapple with those things, it is not that we don't appreciate your contribution to this nation we all love.